Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for coming out tonight. There's so many of you. I'm surprised. It's a thrill. This evening, as you know, we've gathered to talk about the future of the monastery here on the property, and some of the. Is that better? A little better? Speak louder. If you want to speak, stand up. If you want to be heard, speak louder. If you want to be appreciated, sit down. That's okay, well, welcome. Thanks for being here tonight. We're here to talk about the monastery and its future and our responsibility towards that future. So let's begin with prayer, shall we? I have one here. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord, we thank you for helping us recognize and answer your call to be here this evening. We pray for an increasing awareness of your messages to us through the people you send into our lives who need us, through the struggles we face from day to day, and in the quiet moments when we pray. We ask for your guidance as we strive to answer our baptismal call to live as true disciples of Christ, loving you and in gratitude for all you have given us, loving and caring for others. Help us to recognize and help others to recognize that we make a difference in our own parishes, our communities, in the larger church and the whole world, in how we use while we are here the gifts you have given us, earth and all its wonders, time to pray, work, play, and love, talents and abilities and resources that guide us on our pilgrim journey of faith. Be with us this evening as we gather and give us the gift of your Spirit to grant us wisdom and understanding. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. One of the things I wanted to kind of start with was a little bit of a history lesson, because last night I was at the Capital Campaign kickoff at the Roma Lodge with Archbishop Listecki and a whole group of people from various parishes throughout this area. And they showed an 8-minute video regarding the capital campaign that's coming our way. And during the course of that video, one of the things that they showed was an image of, and they kind of had a camera that kind of panned over it, of a cemetery. And I thought to myself, boy, that reminds me of my last assignment. When I walked out the back door of my house up there, was a whole cemetery in my backyard. I thought, oh boy, this is quiet neighbors, and I gotta admit. Nevertheless, one of the things we also did was had a celebration to acknowledge the 140th, I think it was, anniversary of the parish. And as a part of that celebration, one of the things we had was, I'll get out of your way. One of the things we had was a kind of a tour of the cemetery, and we had characters, people who played various significant members of the community who were part of the community and were born to eternal life. And I ended up playing one of the pastors that was there at the time, Father James McGowan, born in County Leitrim, Ireland in 1844. He died in 1866. And I thought to myself as I was portraying this character, one of the things that occurred to me as I was speaking to a crowd was that all those headstones I was surrounded by, and Father McGowan's, who died in 1866, the church I was standing next to was built in 1867. I can't help but think that I took his place. I was the successor to him. And we owe him a great deal of a deep debt of gratitude for the work that he put in, planning for the building of this church that he would never see the fruition of. And not only did I stand on his shoulders, but all of us as a faith community stand on the shoulders of all those who have gone before us and made sacrifices throughout their lives of faith. And so I also had the opportunity, with the help of my brilliant secretary, she's here somewhere. Oh, back there. Oh, way in the back. Dear Kathy, what do I do without her? She was peeling through some old photo directories and things and found these photographs of the earliest images of the church. So this is on Douglas Avenue. You can take a look at these later. This one was a saloon. It was a saloon. They turned it into a old men's living accommodation. This one was a bowling alley. A bowling alley that eventually turned into the church, this church. And then the upstairs level was for housing for priests. And then the building next to that, at the far right, is the first school of St. Rita, which eventually would become a convent for the sisters who taught in the school, because the school down by Court and Dick's Hardware. Listen to me. I sound like a native, don't I? Down by Court and Dick's down there, yo. Court and Dick's there, hey, was built and housed the school. So, we've gone through a lot of changes throughout the history of this parish. Seen a lot of growth and development. And like our ancestors, those who have gone before us, here we are tonight, going through yet another opportunity of growth and development. It was also noted in the bulletin from dated September 9th, 1979. Remember that? Parish meeting today, 3 p.m., Church Hall. This meeting is for brainstorming, sharing ideas about our future plans of St. Rita. It's sponsored by the Ad Hoc Committee of Buildings and Grounds. This is the first time to share your ideas. Or this is the time, not the first time. It's the time to share your ideas. Should we buy a 33-acre property and monastery? Should we build a new church? Should we convert the gym into a permanent church? Should we add a chapel to the school? Any other ideas? Please come. The committee wants input. This is your chance to be heard. If you don't come, don't complain 6 months from now that no one listens or cares about your ideas. Loving that. Come share your ideas, get involved in your future at St. Rita's. 1979. And here it is again. Our turn to step up to the plate. And so having shared that with you, I'd like to also share a little bit about the questionnaires that went out and came back. Today, we reached a record of 122 responses, which I think is very excellent. And there's a lot of information in here. A lot of questions and concerns and interests and suggestions, some of which I've written out. So there's the first option that was on the letter that was sent out, questionnaire, survey. Overview of the monastery and survey. Option 1, full removal. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't even read my own writing. Crying out loud. It says full renovation of the monastery. These are some of the comments that came back. Perhaps you can listen to these comments, and if you have questions after I read the first option, if you have any questions, let me know. Nobody asks a question without a microphone. That's a house rule tonight. Why? Because everybody here might have the same question on their mind. So I'll come at you with my Phil Donahue. Is the caller there? So their first option is to totally renovate. And the suggestion for the purpose of the building was housing for the elderly, sponsored by real estate. I don't know what that is, but housing for the elderly. Retreat house, wedding reception venue, conference center, office rental. Commercial rental with parking facility, senior apartments, healthcare, freighted Aurora. Get into a relationship with them perhaps. Revive daycare, teen center, youth ministry, living recommendations for retired priests, living accommodations rather for retired priests. A facility to support vets or perhaps young mothers. Facility to teach life skills, I get it. We're not to run the parish, but run the program, but partner with organizations that provide such services. Good suggestions. Multi-generational service center, perhaps like a daycare facility for elderly and young alike. Renovate with an eye to renting for things such as funeral lunches, weddings, showers, retreats, and ministries. A shelter for homeless, released prisoners, and that was for option 1. Anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am. I'm coming at you.
So all these suggestions are great. And last night when we were at that other function, if we were to have a purpose for that building, would we possibly be able to get a grant to help cover costs to do some of those things? Does anybody know about grants?
She was asking about if there was any way of getting grant money in order to help with the cost of the renovation of the building to a full renovation, meaning all the plumbing, all the electrical, wiring, roof, tuck pointing, windows, and an elevator, to name a few. Just to name a few. So the purpose better be pretty darn good. Some of these suggestions are untenable, as it turns out. I want to be clear about that at the very get-go. One of the things that we face as a church, I guess I don't need both. One of the situations we face as a church is that we are our tax exempt status. This is something that I want to kind of try and be clear about, and I hope if anybody has anything from parish leadership to this, please feel free. Our tax status. One of the things that happens when we do things like rent a building is we put our tax status at risk, our tax exempt status at risk whenever we charge rent. So rent is a word that we have to eradicate from our vocabulary. We don't rent the school to Siena. we enter into an agreement with them, a usage agreement. It's not a rent agreement. We don't rent to Siena. If we did, we would be jeopardizing our tax exempt status. Phil's coming.
Thank you, Phil. That's not working.
It'll go on in a minute.
Is it on? Oh, there it is. I was thinking about what you just said. We don't rent. What if, possibility, an LLC can be formed within this parish to annex that building and create a different tax base bracket to be able to do something like the things that were suggested?
That I'd have to look into.
Is that possible?
Is there any lawyers here? Is there a lawyer in the room? Please help me with that. That would have to, I have no answer for that, I'm sorry. I would have to look into it. I've contacted the Archdiocese and I'm waiting to hear back from them because of the comment that was actually a comment that was made last night at the Capitol campaign about the use of a building that caught my ear a little bit. And I thought, I'm going to call the diocese and find out what exactly they have to say about this, or any suggestions they may have, and the possibility of opening it up to any program the diocese. Oh, and that was the thing. It was like a learning center, kind of community-based organization that they're looking to do in Milwaukee proper to help with the poverty-stricken communities that thrive there. Thought, maybe they'll have an idea or a suggestion as to what we could do with this building. Possibilities. One of the things that was a part of the questionnaire that I sent out, the survey, the questionnaire, was that we provide a purpose for the building. We must do that in order to know how to move forward. By providing a purpose for the building and having determined what that purpose will need as far as the building is concerned, what updates would need to be a part of that, will certainly be all inclusive in this whole discussion. And how much is the parish willing to support that?
That was basically where I was going to go, is asking what is the expectation or the anticipated payback on the investment of 1.7.
Once a purpose has been determined.
Right. So, what is the assumption there? And then, I guess when I was looking at all the options, I was thinking of, okay, there's an inherent risk on each of these, but the residual risk is always the abatement of the asbestos. So I think that would exist in all three scenarios. And is that the only residual risk that is being assumed, or are there others that we just didn't contemplate? And then kind of factoring that in,
Go ahead.
our operating costs, right? There's an operating budget, obviously, for all facilities. Is the expectation that the $50,000 annually on the existing old building would be reduced, kind of taper off, or stay the same? And then how does that relate to the existing operating costs for this facility? Because at some point, as this ages, that cost is also going to rise. So have we factored all of that together? Hello. Okay, so I was kind of following up on Father when he was talking about Father. Hello. This is not God. So I was asking Father what was the assumption for payback on the 1.7 million if we were to invest that. He then mentioned we'd have to define a purpose to understand what we would think our anticipated payback would be over how much time. And then I said, when you look at the options, those are all the inherent risk. And I was trying to understand, was the abatement of the asbestos seems to be a residual risk in all three options regardless. Was that the only residual risk that was assumed, or are there others that could change the costs? And then, I kind of feel like the homily. And then I asked, the operating costs right now on the existing old buildings is about $50,000 annually. In the investment, is there an assumption then that those operating costs would be reduced or maintained at about that same level? And then how does that factor into the overall operating budget when you consider the existing new church here and those operating expenses? Because as this age, those costs will begin to increase as well.
I hope that makes sense to some people. It don't make sense to me. But I think, though, that no matter what the choice would be, for example, for the purpose of the building, it would have to be certainly something that would bring in revenue. So things like updating the building completely to put a youth ministry program in that won't bring in $1. And it will increase costs because we'll be heating the place for the 12 kids or 5 kids that show up weekly. You know what I mean?
Well, the best idea would be if you can find. Obviously, the best idea would be if you can find multiple purposes that it can be used for, because then you're going to have more resources. And I mean, there's how many floors it can, if you find the right things that it can be used for, it could be multiple, and then you're going to be getting more funds coming in.
Just a comment. So we built this new church here because it was necessary for accessibility. We need to remember that. And we're talking about an old building that would need a lot of updating to accommodate the people that would be entering in and out of the building. Just remember why we made the decision we made so many years ago to build this church. Just a comment.
And the idea with the multi-purpose building, I think that would be a big struggle. The DeCoven Foundation has been dealing with that for decades, and it's still not working out for them.
Okay? So again, I say, where?
A couple of comments that I might have about the building. You're saying the purpose of the building. We had the Augustinians, we had a CARES program, and we had the parish offices. So right now you're saying the burden falls on the parish offices. But how was the decision made to close a program that was generating revenue for that building, which was the CARES program, and that was not at a town hall, it was just made unilaterally? So why couldn't we reinstitute a program like that? And then the second part of the comment about what to do with the hall, the dollar numbers that are indicated there are saying that we need an elevator. How much of that cost, 1.7, was dedicated to the elevator? They didn't want to put the elevator on to make the church handicapped accessible at the time that we were considering building this church, but now we're considering putting an elevator on for an unknown option to try to develop a use for that. So I just don't know what the minimum and the maximum, I'm assuming the 1.7 is the maximum amount to put the parish, or to put that facility back into whatever use, who's deciding. So, and then the third part of that might be, we don't even know what the parish finances are as far as what we would need to do to sustain that facility. Do we need to do a capital campaign? What kind of money do we have to raise for that? All of it? None of it? I mean, that hasn't been gone, and addressed in any of these proposals. So we're going to do a capital campaign for the archdiocese, and then I'm assuming we're going to have to do some sort of capital campaign for whatever we decide. And if it's tearing down the building, that's still $1 million right there or more, because the unknown is the asbestos cost to that. So, and then we still have operating costs, and then we still have to decide where we're going to do a parish office. So what kind of parish office are you going to build? Where's that facility going to be located? How much are we going to spend on that parish office facility? And there's still ongoing operating costs for that too. Mm-hmm. So I guess we had a three-part function of that building prior, and 2 out of the 3 are missing now. So one wasn't our doing, that was the Augustinians, but what about the CARES program or something like that?
Yeah, it's always, that's an option, giving the building a purpose to provide a CARES program, a daycare program for children.
But we had that.
You did have it. And it was starting to cost the parish money because they would not increase their fee for the CARES program, so they could brag that they were the least expensive care program in town.
Well, that could have been adjusted by adjustment.
It could have been. That could have been adjusted by a couple of things. Now, having said that, the CARES program no longer is here. Would it be beneficial for us as a parish community, in an effort to reinstate that CARES program, that child care program, whatever it would be called, at the price of $1.7 million?
Wow.
Or any figure between that and 100,000 or so, or more. Why do I say that? Why do I ask that? Because if we were to have a CARES program reinstituted in the parish, in that building, today, we would still have to incur the expense of putting a new roof on the building, which is omnipresent, doing all the tuck pointing, replacing windows in the old church for safety reasons. Then that runs to about $250,000 right there.
So $250,000 to get a revenue generating program.
To make the building safe for revenue generating program.
And then still have parish offices, which is still located here. I mean, what are we going to do for parish offices?
Oh, sorry.
I was just
Sorry,
gonna say,
Phil's doing a bad job.
No, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was complaining I couldn't hear. So, but yeah, say 250. But if you're going to replace parish offices, I don't think you're going to get away with 250 to put up a new building for parish offices. So, I mean, $50,000 a year for annual operating costs for parish offices seems relatively low to me. And if you could offset that by revenue, by something else, even if it was a $250,000 campaign, seems to be the least intrusive on the parish on top of a dual capital campaign. Again, we haven't talked about how we're financing any of this because none of that was, we weren't privy to any of that in this information. So, I mean, it's kind of, dual fold. We don't know what we've got, yet we're asked to make a decision about what we're supposed to keep or spend.
There's one back here.
I just wanted to say that we all filled out a survey, and so what was the majority decision on which option that everybody picked?
This is one example of a survey that actually came in today that had no option indicated, but has plenty of commentary. So I haven't really put that in a category as yet. As of July 28th, option 1, 26 responses. Option 2, raising the monastery building. As of today, 49 responses. Option 3, as of today, converting the monastery to a storage facility. I want to clarify that after I speak to this. As of today, there were 24 responses. Option 4, sale of a portion or complete property and a new church location. That was the 4th option. There were 20 responses that indicated that preference. That makes sense? No? Why not?
I don't like the option.
Well, I didn't.
I don't understand people to pick that option. That's my point.
Well, okay, let's talk about these options then. The first option is a full upgrade of the monastery building. You know how much that's going to cost through the information that was provided? Yeah, I'll give that to you. We don't have the asbestos abatement, but if we should renovate the building, does it entail that we have to remove asbestos? If it's sealed as is?
Yeah.
Like I say, I had to ask the question because I don't know. So we may not have to touch the asbestos, but put a new roof on, get the rooms tucked, get the bricks tuck pointed, clean up the electrical and the plumbing problems.
And then the building's good to go
for something, but we haven't determined a purpose for it. So do you want to spend that kind of money for something we don't know what's going to go on in there? Or have no plan for it to go on?
Right, so we need a purpose, and it can't be a purpose. So if we come up with a purpose.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, my bad, sorry.
If we come up with a purpose that we're willing to fund as a parish, great. We can spend the money and do whatever we want. If we think we're going to come up with a purpose that's going to fund itself, I think we're dreaming.
One of the things I looked at on that survey is that it's going to cost half, if not more than half, to raise that building than to fix it up. So you do need some sort of purpose for that building to keep it. But to raise that building, you're better off selling it, letting somebody else do it.
Okay. Over where?
When you're talking about the cost of raising the building, you've got to keep in mind that that building is used for more than just the office. Our ministries meet there. You tear it down, where will we meet? You're talking about moving the offices here in our narthex. That means we can't have any meetings in the narthex. And where will the ministries meet? So when you talk about raising that building, you also have to add in the cost of building new offices and some meeting space. So you've got to add that on. You can't just get rid of all that and say, okay, now we're done. You're going to have the cost of new building. And that area is going to have to be heated and air conditioned and maintained. So, keep that in mind.
come to you.
So I just want to mention that there is some history in terms of doing something like having an alternative purpose for that. The Franciscan sisters up just north of the Cousins Center took a number of their buildings and turned them into low income housing. They got HUD grants and other things like that. So there is some history. Now it's been a long time since I've been involved with the sisters, so I don't know what's gone on or how successful it's been long term. But certainly somebody can figure out whether or not that is a viable thing to even think about. That building needed sort of the same stuff that our building did in terms of, well, no, they used the existing buildings. They renovated the buildings, and
They eliminated buildings too, because that used to be the site of St. Mary's Academy.
right. Oh, that's right. They eliminated
Girls'
the
high
building
school.
up front, but the other buildings were in back, St. Anne's Center and things like that. There is history. The Archdiocese, at least, or somebody around here, should be able to figure out whether it's viable. It's going to be expensive no matter what. I mean, we need to be able to have a commitment if we're going to do something like that. I mean, obviously the Franciscan sisters had a commitment to the low-income housing and probably put some money into it, but long-term as part of their ministry. But I think that's part of that's part of the question. If we're talking about doing it, but there's also history in the diocese for doing this sort of thing. So we ought to learn from somebody else as well. This is part of what I'm saying.
You knew the nun that organized it.
Oh, okay. Is the caller there? Jane wants to speak, and I say, how high?
Okay, I did want to mention that we're one of them who did not turn in the survey yet because we were going to have this meeting. How many people didn't turn in their surveys yet? So that's not really a tried and true and accurate. Thank you. Just another comment about the raising of the building is that's a lot of money. Who wants to pay money? Who wants to contribute to something we're getting rid of? I think more people would want to contribute if we're going to make something of that building. And that's just my opinion, but I wouldn't want to give if we're just tearing something down.
I think it could be equally said that nobody's going to give money to a building that doesn't have a purpose either.
Right. Well, I'm assuming that we
You
have
know,
a purpose before we...
Just in fairness, I
Yes,
think that's
yes.
equally true.
Timeline for this?
For what? No,
Getting rid of the
we are not.
For this
We are
decision?
not.
Oh.
No. This is the early stages I wanted to be sure and include people in the conversation because it's a big decision. And I'll tell you what, I love what I do, but I don't want to make this decision on my own. There are a lot of decisions I can make on my own, but this ain't one of them. Believe you me. Next question. Okay.
You know, way back when we decided to not update the church and we went along with building this church, wasn't this phase one of the church? When it was
Right.
completed, we would have wings.
Right.
We would have room for the
There would be
meeting.
offices and meeting spaces located off the north side, and then there would be a cafeteria / lunchroom, kind of potentially a classrooms for religious ed, I think. Is that true? Over on this end. Oh, okay. But yes, those were the two plans. There were to be two wings off of each end of this building, the north and the south end of this building.
That's correct. But the point I'm making is we won't be able to do that if we are involved with renovating the old church, which is going to be an expense. And we also have to remember that the membership of the parishes in a whole is dwindling. So we're taking on a big responsibility here. And so to complete what we originally wanted to do, I don't think we can do that with renovating the old church. I think we should, my feeling would be we should go with our original plan and
Focus on putting the office and
focus on what we decided to do years ago.
focus on the office, giving attention and focus on the offices and the meeting spaces that are intended to be attached to the north end of the building.
Well, that's what we kind of were discussing, things we need that building for, we don't. We should maybe continue and finish what we started.
Fulfilling the purpose that was designed for this church, this location.
So that would be my feeling anyway.
Yeah, I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that, centers a lot on the fact that the monastery as it stands right now was built in 1941. 1941, they didn't have the kind of sensitivities that we have today. And as a result, not one lick of that monastery is handicap accessible. None of it. Not 1 inch of it.
To Mary's suggestion earlier, when you talked about if we wanted to get rid of it, sell it and let someone else take it down
Or
or repurpose, how intrusive to our community would that be if we had some other business there, depending on what they were? Since if they buy it, we have no control over what they're doing, and now it disrupts our community here. So
That's a very good question, and I think that addresses one of the suggestions that was put forth in that first set of responses that came in, to say, for example, turn it into a homeless shelter or a place for former incarcerated members of our community. Whenever you think of some suggestion that'll serve as a purpose for that building, one of the things you must bear in mind is the fact that it's right next to a school. I read that lovely note about and comment about, interested in turning it into a homeless shelter for people who are homeless. That's a great Christian suggestion. It really is. It would be a beautiful thing to be able to transform that building and utilize it that way, but you have to remember, homeless people will be coming and going all day long, and they're next to a school. I don't know if I can put children at risk like that.
our road in, is that an actual street?
St. Rita Street.
Because if another business goes there, then that has to be a thoroughfare.
How much land would be sacrificed if they bought the monastery, if someone bought it? They're gonna need a parking lot, they're gonna need a driveway, but there is an extra one right next to the quarry. But how much land will go with a sale? We'd be losing anything we have to for our festivals, fish fries, whatever.
Well, the festival anyway. Fish fries happen in the gym. We're covered.
That's 3 days a year.
Okay,
We're going
but
to talk about purposing something for someone else to use as a business.
where would they put their parking lot? That's where I
There is
said-
parking available. One of the things I want to encourage too, before we get any further, because I don't know how long this is going to last. I can't guarantee anything. We're doing a good job though. Is a tour afterwards. I'll take you in. show you around. People who haven't been in there ever. Many people, longtime parishioners here have never been in there. I'm going to lead you through after this meeting, so stay with the tour. Okay, there's more comments and questions coming. Do you have one?
Greg,
Oh.
Thank you, Father. I'm having a hard time with this because I don't sense a vision. You know, where are we going to the future? You know, that's the one thing. What is the vision that we have that's consistent with our mission and where we see ourselves going? You know, where is the Spirit calling us? What's our mission now going forward, given all the dynamics going on in the area and, you know, where the church is and where God's calling us, you know, and it's hard to specify things until we know what that purpose is, you know. That's the thing, you know. So do we need a little more study, a little more information about, I don't know, demographics, growth, what's going on in the community, and where do we see the Spirit calling us? Where are we going? What's our vision?
In the back. Phil's coming.
I was wondering who paid to build the monastery in 41 or 44 or whatever you said? The Augustinians or the parish? So the question I have is when the Augustinians built the monastery, they lived here, their order thrived there. Under their leadership, we decided to build this new church. When they negotiated with the diocese to pull out and for St. Rita's to become a diocesan church, were they asked to leave some money to deal with this legacy building of theirs?
It's a very good question.
And I mean, in a sense, they left us holding the bag.
But we own it, though.
They could have left an endowment for us to deal with. No, they could have. The East Coast orders are much wealthier than the Midwest orders because of the property that they've inherited and sold from Boston, or given to them, right. It's very different.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to some of that. Oh, Sharon has one, though. I'll get it to you after I get to Sharon.
Remember what you read about 1979? That's when the Canadian Augustinians left and the Midwestern Augustinians came in. But when the Canadians left, they did own everything, and they told us we had to buy it. So we own that building, not the Augustinians from the Midwest. And we own the land from that point on. So there you go.
Father, do we have a timetable on this?
No, we do not.
Do we have enough money to keep it going? And do nothing?
Sort of. He wants to know if we have a timetable on this and if we have resources to keep that building afloat until such time as we are able to determine a purpose and a direction for the renovations. To that answer, no. No timetable. Financial resources to keep the building heated and lit, water going to it, sure. Is there anyone here from finance? Who am I looking at? Yeah, go ahead. Here's your turn.
What's the question? We are early in the process. However, we do want to be able to
make a decision pretty quickly. We are in a deficit. We ended the year in a deficit. So when we say we have funds, there is money that is in the cash or in some other areas that we can use to cover that deficit. The only reason that our deficit isn't any larger or that our cash balance is as high as it is right now is because we've had some COVID relief from the government. So there is a concern that we do want to make a decision, not a rash decision, but a decision. So that's, I believe, why Father's bringing this to the parish now. There's also some concern about our capital campaign, and I'm not sure if we can combine the two in terms of an option. So is there another question, or is it? Oh.
The reason I asked that question was because I know a lot of these renovation projects come in at 1.7 mil, and you put them off for a year, that might go to 3 mil. And I'm just a little concerned with like this 1.7 amount that's being thrown out here. Where did we get that from, and is it pretty solid?
That $1.7 million is really should have been $1.3 million, which is from a report that we got from the architects we had come in and review the building.
This year?
2 years ago, 3 years ago, nearly 3 years ago. The Augustinians did it prior to my arrival. And that was at 1.3 million. I only put 1.7 million in because I assumed, and probably very conservatively, that there would be increases in the cost of the renovation, the complete renovation of that building.
Just a thought. Would it be more beneficial to renovate that building for our purposes for office space, meeting space, a space as yet determined to make it more viable, than it is to dig ground and build out? Do we have an architect?
We haven't had an architect come to do.
I'm just asking though, if the plumbing, the electrical, I don't know what it needs to happen in there, but would it be cheaper to renovate that building for the purposes that we need than it is to dig ground and build out?
So, yeah, I think one of the things that would have to be taken into consideration is that if we start a project of upgrading that building, one of the things we're going to want to do is make at least the first floor handicap accessible. Right? Am I right?
Yes. I think you have to.
I think that once you start in on a renovation project, that's kind of the direction they kind of make you go. I'm pretty confident.
So I guess what I'm saying is if I get kind of enthusiastic, I apologize. If you had to renovate that, and you had an architect come in and you had plans drawn up, we could put the capital campaign, because you did mention at Mass we get 60% of the money that we raise, correct?
Correct.
We can put it toward that. We can ask for grants. We can ask for donations around the community to help us out. It may be more beneficial to do that than to sell, break ground, or whatever. Just a thought.
And all for the purpose of having a meeting spaces and a parish office.
Meeting spaces, parish office, and something else that is yet to be determined.
Okay.
Something else that is yet to be determined.
Something else. Parish meeting spaces, parish office, and something that makes it viable for us to do. The suggestion that I'm waiting for the Spirit to inspire all of us to bring forth. Bring it now.
What about the possibility of knocking down the living quarter section of the monastery, retaining the old church, thereby keeping the church offices? We'd have to keep the boiler room, but we would only have to re-roof part of the building, and majority of the asbestos is in the living quarter portion of the building over there. Just knock that wing down.
I have a question. If we were to sell, does that include the school and the school grounds? How does that factor into this decision?
The sale of property, the option that was on there, number 4, the sale of property was clearly written out and just purposefully written the way it was. Sale of a portion or complete property and new church location. So, well, let's talk about the sale of the property. One option available to us is certainly to sell just the building. That raises all kinds of issues in and of itself. A second option is to sell the portion of the property that the monastery is on, that being the monastery and the property out to Douglas Avenue on the south side of the boulevard. Third option would be to sell the entire property, lock, stock, and barrel, and the person who purchases the property would pay us basically somewhere in the neighborhood of the amount of money it would cost to build a new church in another location. Just the way St. Paul did it when they sold to, what was it, like Festival Food and that whole that whole place over there, that whole property. And then they have now that beautiful facility out on Spring Street. That's the idea behind the sale of the property, and that's where the money would come from to build the new church.
But I think we have to be realistic. There's a big difference between the property that St. Paul's owned at the corner of 20 and 31, which was highly commercial and desirable, and this property, which to my mind is probably only desirable to Payne and Dolan, who our neighbors would dearly love if they bought it. I mean, from that perspective. And so I don't think we are likely to realize the same value for the land as St. Paul's did. First of all, it's next to Payne and Dolan, which is certainly a desirable neighbor. And then second of all, it's on Douglas Avenue, which is not, it's not quite as commercial a street as the intersection of 20 and 31 was for St. Paul's. I mean, St. Paul's was a unique situation, and I think that to equate what we have with them, I think it would be foolish.
I don't mean to equate it with them. I just mean to draw the similarity. If Payne and Dolan were the ones who were to purchase the property, they would pay dearly for it, but the part of the contract of the sale would include them building a new church for us, which would cost us nothing. Zero.
Right. We are not considering closing down this parish at all, are we? That's not
No.
Or consolidating with other churches.
No, not at this. Not until I hear from on high.
Has Payne and Dolan ever approached us?
Has Payne and Dolan ever approached us? No. Have I approached them? No. We're too early in this to be able to say one way or another what we can do. What?
Before this church was built, Vulcan wanted to buy the property. They offered Sacred $1 million for this property. Contingent on them getting the permit to extend the board.
So Vulcan was, at the time this church was in the burner, to be built. Vulcan approached and said they wanted to buy the property for $1 million. Just the part that the church is on. I need this history lesson.
But it was contingent on them being able to drill and continue the quarry. That was contingent on Caledonia allowing them to expand. And with them expanding east, I don't think Caledonia is going to let them expand north.
Yes, why?
Why? I don't see it. I don't see them, letting us do that or letting Vulcan, Payne and Doyle do that. It was a big deal for them to go the other way, so.
Okay.
So you keep saying that if we would sell the whole thing lock, stock, and barrel with the contingent that they would build a new church scot-free. What about the school? Just curious.
We'd have to determine what to do with the school.
That wouldn't be sold with it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The whole property, lock, stock, and barrel.
But no school?
No school. We'd probably end up building a church without a school, be my guess.
If they were offering us $1 million 20 years ago, if they were offering us $1 million 15, 17 years ago, whatever it was, we're thinking that somehow they're going to offer us $4 or $5 million now, because that's what it would cost to build a new church somewhere else.
This costs $4 million. This
Right.
church alone costs $4
Right.
million.
So-
a little over, right?
But we're talking about selling it all to someone who's going to pay us that much for it. Has somebody said they'd pay us that much for it?
No conversation has been had with Payne and Dolan to this point at all.
Yeah, I guess
But
15 years ago it was worth $1 million to them, I've heard.
to them,
Yeah, so. Okay.
that's how business works, I think. They lowball you, say, I'll pay you $1 million for your property, and the $1 million signal goes up and looks real sweet. But the actual value of it is $7 million.
Right, they have to make money.
That's the way businesses work. We have to be more proactive and step up to the plate and say, oh, no, we'll sell this to you, but it's going to be for $10 million. And a portion of that $10 million is going to be in cash. The rest is going to be in a building.
This is a great first step for discussion, but it'd be nice if we had more up-to-date information. That 1.7 is 3 years old. Have we discussed any kind of options with a professional developer? And have we discussed it with the Archdiocese as to where they see us in 3-5 years?
As a parish, given the fact that I was here during the payment period to the architect that we hired, I don't think we can afford to do that with people that are professionals. I don't think we can afford it. They're very expensive. Geez, my knees. Well, we can look into it. Oh, I'll go this way and then.
I wanted to ask about option 4. Doesn't the Archdiocese have to be involved with that decision?
Option 4.
Relocate and build?
Certainly, they would be informed of it. And
You alluded to the fact that
Right.
unless you got some direction from above.
Right,
So,
right.
Are they suggesting that?
They haven't suggested anything. I haven't even approached them with this yet.
Okay, that's.
That's how early we are in all this. I just want to get a feel from.
But I heard something, you say early, and I heard finance say soon. So
Well,
I heard two different,
yeah.
that's a disconnect between what was said and what being done. So,
Well, yeah. So we're not on a timeline. That's going to be determined once we are able to determine a purpose, if there is one, for that building.
So has anybody
And-
got land or a relocation area?
There's been some suggestions, but I don't think it's anything of serious nature. Do you remember somebody was, for example, somebody had suggested the property that was denied by Caledonia to Walmart out on 31 and 4 Mile and 31? 4 Mile and 31. So there's other properties that it must be available in Caledonia. We'll have to look into that sort of thing. But I just don't want to, I don't want people to go out of here saying, oh, Father told us last night that they're buying that property. That's something I want to try and avoid, if at all possible. Father said we're buying property on 4 Mile and 31. Oh, okay, great. I'm not. Green Bay Road, 31.
I happened to be at all the meetings for the expansion of the quarry with Caledonia for Charles Street, because I live in the area. And that company made their presentation and made it pretty clear to the town board and everybody there, they have no plans on expanding any further once they mine this section out. And they had going to turn that into a lake and a park once they're done and gone, allegedly. But that's years to go. And I think what we're doing here is we're looking at a lot of long-term plans. The building's a short-term plan. It sounds like we got to deal with the building in short term. The rest of this stuff about expanding the church, doing things for the whole area here, I look at those as long term. So, short term, we have a building that we're not using, we're not generating any money out of, and it sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money to get fixed. Or raised.
I just wanted to say that as much as it would hurt me to see the church torn down, since we were married there and our kids had all their activities there, that's the cheapest option. People don't have money today. I don't think you can get people to donate and give. I think you need to go with that option. And it would be crazy to take this nice, beautiful church down and do something different. Yes. This church, why would we ever? I'm talking about the monastery at first, I said, but why? That was the other thing everybody's mentioning about building a new church. That would be crazy to build a new church in this beautiful church we have that we all donated to. I can't ever see that happening. I don't know. Yeah, we own it. It's our church. We all helped pay for it. We gave to the old church, but now, you want to keep giving every month all these expenses? That doesn't make sense.
Well, the only thing that doesn't seem to make sense right now is the thought that you seem to be having that we're going to have to pay for the new church. If we were to sell this property,
that's what I'm saying.
We would receive money that would cover the cost of the new church.
I understand.
So, for example, if I were to go over to Payne and Dolan tomorrow morning and say, hey, we're looking to sell this property for $10 million. Are you ready to buy it? And they say yes, and they write me a check for $10 million. Well, there's the other problem. What if they're not ready? Nevertheless, what I'm trying to address is her situation right here in her conversation and discussion about tearing down this building. Well, there's no plan to do that. We've never had any discussion about that until the point we talk about the option to sell property.
But if you're talking about eventually selling this property and building a new church?
But that's one option.
I know, but I'm saying it sounds like a crazy option.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, I can handle that. Thank you. I can deal with that. There's one back here.
So yes, we have this beautiful church, but why can't we hold on to it and just get rid of what we don't need, which is just that section, and then we can stay here, the school can stay here, and then whoever buys that will do their thing. I don't know, that just sounds, yeah? Okay, there you go.
Everything's kind of free-flowing here.
Having this to you in a little bit, Carol, I got to stand up. Legs falling asleep. I'll give Father Michael an opportunity to sit down. I'm an engineer. I'm a facilities engineer, and I can tell you right now that quote that was given by the Augustinians 3 years ago, you might as well pack that up and throw it in the garbage. That's 1.7 million. You're probably looking more realistically at about 4 million. My parish members, that's just the tip of the iceberg. If you want to renovate it and use it for something else, you got to look at the structure. No two ways around it. When you look at that structure, you're going to mess around with the asbestos. There's no two ways of getting around it. That is going to be expensive to remove and repair.
So that's kind of like what we're looking at, you gotta kind of stay with facts and say the abatement exists in any of the options.
Absolutely. There's no two ways around it. I totally agree with you. But with that option of, and let's just call it what it is, tearing down Casia Hall. That is a hard phrase right there, because we've got a lot of ties with Casia Hall. First communions, weddings, you name it. So there's a lot of ties to that. But unfortunately, we have to think about the parish. When I say think about the parish, if you renovate it, you try to keep it up. I'm an usher also. I see the attendance. We don't have the attendance numbers like we used to. They're dwindling. The finance committee pretty much made it very clear that we're running in debt. That is going to be a major debt digger. It's nothing but a money pit. I hate to say it like that to Casia Hall, but we have to face the facts. It was mentioned earlier, what do we do with meetings? I'm with the festival also. We have our meetings right here in the narthex. Could that be also used for other ministries? I would say yes. I'm sorry, what did you? Right, so we do have a plan, is what it sounds like. And the design of this church made it possible to expand, so we do have options. I don't know, I just wanted to put that out there that with how much we love Casia Hall, we have to look at it realistically. It's been there for 80 years. We've neglected it for 20 ever since we had this church. With that neglect is just going to be expenses that it's going to be very hard to justify to put into it. That's about all I have to say. Father Michael?
I think one of the things that might need to be clarified is that whole discussion regarding the use of the narthex for meetings. At this point, the Buildings and Grounds Committee has looked at the option of putting the offices in the narthex on the north side here with a wall that would close off that portion of the narthex for the security of the offices and things that happen in the office. But that does not eliminate the space right here that could be used for meetings very easily. Meetings that happen at night with a specific number of people. Say, for example, the parish council. I can get 10 people at a table in that area. No problem. Also available is the bride's room for a meeting area. It's a solution to the problem that we face by moving out of Casia Hall, otherwise known as the Monastery. So it's not a huge issue to have to overcome. We can meet in this space. Huh? Plus there's a basement here. Again though, it's always about handicap accessibility, isn't it? The purpose of us considering moving the offices over here is to eliminate the problem that we have in Casia Hall with just no accessibility at all. So put the offices here. They can come in through the doors any time of the day or night they want even without a walker. They can hang them on the hook in the wall on the way in. Make it look like a... No.
Thank you. Earlier, somebody was talking about the school and things like that, and I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind enlightening us on the number of Catholic children that attend that school that were coming to school there and coming here, so that maybe everybody could get an overall view and be able to make more clear decisions on whatever they choose to do?
Well, that's a tough question to answer because of last week's gospel. Jesus, Sodom and Gomorrah. If you find 50 worthy people, are you going to destroy the city? If you find 40, that's a tough question to answer, but I will give you some figures just the same. In the school last year, it was reported that they had 225 students. Now, one of the things I want to make crystal clear, because I think this is a misunderstanding that people have. I am the pastor of St. Rita Parish. I am not the pastor of the school. Sienna runs that school. I'm the pastor of a parish, not of the school. That is not St. Rita's school. It has the name St. Rita on it, but it's a Sienna school. Is that clear to everybody? Is that kind of sinking in? We do pay money towards that school, a lot of money. And actually, as it turns out, it's about equivalent to the amount of deficit our parish has. Who wanted to ask a question? We own the property. We own the property. Sienna runs the school.
Do we rent it out to them then?
We don't rent anything to anybody. We have a usage agreement. We rent nothing to nobody because of the tax problem. We don't want to run into a tax problem. So we rent nothing to no one. We have a usage agreement with them. And a subsidy. Yeah, with them, yeah. Greasy one. Carol's question, did I answer it? Oh, I'm sorry, you know what? Okay, there's 225 students in the school last year. Of that 225, it was determined that approximately 40 of them are Catholic. 225 students, of which 40 are Catholic, so very few of them participate in the life of this parish. What? You come to Mass at 8 o'clock, 10:30? Go to each one and do all three in a weekend, for example, and count how many children are here. Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? 225 and 40 of those are Catholic. Or say they are.
Sorry, I forgot to mention that the gentleman in front mentioned about the expansion. I think that's a great idea if we do sell that piece just over there, the monastery, use that money to make the extensions that we originally were going to do with this church. And then that way we'd have more space for Kathy and the offices over there and meetings for all our ministries, and we would have the money to do that if we sold that piece.
Plus the money from the capital campaign.
Right.
Plus the money from the capital campaign. That's coming $365,000 if we meet our goal.
I just want to get back to the question about the school. What are we doing as a parish to get those children over here? We are not fulfilling our mission. We are not being Christian-like. We have been separating this church from that school, and that is awful, awful. We should be ashamed of ourselves.
Okay, so let's take a look at one of the other options that's available, shall we? It's option number 3, which we haven't talked about at all as yet. Option number 3 is converting the monastery building to a storage facility. I want to take a moment to apologize for the unclarity of that option. Many people have written back stating that turning the monastery into a storage facility would also entail putting an elevator on, because there would be people from the community who would be bringing their storage to put it in the monastery. No. The reason why, here we go again, government red tape. We can't rent the portions of the property. That's number 1. But number 2, the understanding which I was hoping to convey was that the building, because we can't call it mothballing, it would have no purpose. And as a result, it would have an effect on our tax-exempt status. So to call it a storage facility satisfies that tax-exempt status. So to that end, this is a book of St. Rita Parish Sunday bulletins from January 7th, 1979 to December 30th, 1979. By virtue of the fact that I have this book stored in the monastery, I can call it a storage facility. Period. It is not intended to be a storage facility like Nelson's or any other of these storage bin places in the city. Do you see what I'm saying? Is that clear enough? Yes. So what we're saying here with this option of turning the building into converting it to a storage area, well, there's plenty of storage in there now. You're going to see that if you go on the tour with me after this meeting is over. But to turn it into a storage facility is to simply say, we're not going to do anything to the building. No expense. We're going to kind of rid ourselves of expense to the extent that we hope that people will see the light of putting offices in the narthex and continuing in the direction of putting on an addition, and allow that building, while we're putting the addition on, to fall apart. That
I just asked if that included not heating it. Does that literally mean we put
yes.
$0 into it? So we just,
no heating, no water.
Just let it fall apart.
Just let her go.
Okay.
Let her go. Okay. Storage. Don't say that in front of any city officials or anybody in the village. Do us all that favor.
Thank you, Father. Are we on? We have to remember that this property is sitting on limestone. When I was a kid, when I went to St. Rita's school here, we were able to climb down the quarry. We would climb down, and this is 7 years ago now. And look at the size of it. It's not going to quit. It's going to get bigger and bigger over time. No matter what's on it, no matter what Caledonia is, the quarry, the necessity of the product is going to win. Here's a crazy idea. We were talking sale of the building. What if you sold that building to the quarry people, and they would, and this is just an idea now, they would invest in the future. In other words, they wouldn't develop that for a given period of time. They would own the church, and they would probably, if they wanted, they would take it down. And then would give us an opportunity to finish what we started here. This may be far-fetched, but we are sitting on valuable property because as the need for limestone, they will get their way. They have, we've seen that over the years. There was always opposition about them expanding. Well, they're expanding because of the need. And that's not going to stop. That's going to keep going. So that's true. But if you worked out a deal with the quarry people for their future development, which you could put whatever number on it, and they would be responsible with the church, with the old, and that would be their responsibility if they flattened it or whatever they did with it, we would have the money to do what we started out with this building. That's just an idea.
I might not need a microphone, but I'll use it. So I'm usually very quiet. I don't usually talk much or give my opinion on anything. So many of you probably know that's not true. One of the things that Deacon Greg said was the fact that we need to think about a mission. And then I heard you say a lot of people talk about the fact that we have a dwindling amount of people participating in parish activities. You know, I've been on the parish council, I've been on the festival committee, and if I look in this room right here, many of you are the same people that attend those same meetings that we all go to. We're 20% of 100%, meaning we are the ones who usually get things done, whether it's volunteering our time, our talent, or our treasure. So it's one of those things. And as we look how we are going to develop that building and decide on an arrangement that possibly could bring in revenue, not renting, of course, we know not renting. We never use that. To me, it just seems, I'm going to be 55 this year, and I feel like one of the younger guys in the room. And so this is not changing. My son, who's going to be 18 next year, is one of the few kids that he sees every Sunday. And so if we think about where we're going to go as a parish and how we're going to get there and what our mission is going to be, a lot of us in this room are the ones who are going to help make that decision, because the other 80%, while they may have an opinion, they're the silent majority. They're not going to come to these. They're not going to speak up. They're not going to tell us what they think. So this is, like he said, the starting position. I'm of the opinion that sinking any more money into a resource that's not going to take advantage is probably not a good idea. We all know what the economy's like today. We're all sacrificing and making concessions at home. If that means that the festival parish or groups have to meet inside the hallway out here and not in the narthex, then we do that. If I remember correctly, Jesus was a pauper and walked around with sandals and was a carpenter. So he gave of himself. And I am not a good example of that, so trust me. But I think, we have to think about consolidating. There's time for expansion when times are good, but that's not now. So we have to think about what is the most cost-effective way that we can continue to see the parish move on. June and I got married at St. Stephen's over on Howell Avenue across from, the Holy Roller stripper joint across the street. So we all know where that is. They sold that property and they moved over to 13th and Oakwood and they built another facility. I don't compare that to here because I don't think that this property is in a commercial state where they're going to be able to do it. They can't even rent out Kmart. So nobody's going to come and rent Kmart, and I don't think we're going to see the property value that we'd expect to build a new church if we sold this. So what is going to be the most cost-effective way for us to continue to keep this beautiful building and continue to grow the parish with what we've got? And while that decision may not be made today, this is the perfect place to start this discussion. And the finance group understands that there is going to be a deficit, and there's a rolling deficit. And those deficits are not going away. So I think, I know you're going to want the microphone next, so I'll make sure you get it. But those are the things I think about. Do we decide that we're just going to stop putting funds in that building? We're going to sacrifice and just have a smaller meeting group? Think about who all comes to the committees. It's not like we have 40 people who are volunteering coming to these committees every time.
We can barely get 10 people to come to the festival committee, and I guarantee you, almost all of you are going to be at the festival working. You're probably not going to be enjoying it. You're going to be there all weekend, from Wednesday through Sunday, some of you from the week before. And you guys should be commended for that, but the rest of the parish is not going to be involved. It's going to be us. And if you come on Sundays or Saturdays when you go to church, we're lucky if we got 70 to 100 people sitting in here. Even at Christmas this last year, you know, the C&E, when we have that, you barely fill up the middle section. So where are we going? Like Deacon Greg said, that's what we need to think about and how we're going to get there. We need to think about what is the exact mission of us as a parish, as opposed to our immediate need to fix that, or, you know, the government is going to step in. If we want to get occupancy for anybody in that building, every single bit of it has to be upgraded or fixed or repaired or prepared for somebody to get in there. I'm done. I ain't got nothing to say. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I could go all night. How long do you guys want to stay? No.
Give me that.
Thank you.
Along the lines of everything we've been talking about, school, mission, whatever, we're missing a piece of the puzzle. Do we have a demographic of our church so we can see where we're going? Because if we're going to like expand and do whatever, who's going to be here to enjoy it or use it?
Yes, we do.
All right, maybe that should be a part of the piece of the puzzle that we all need to see.
The parish council was working on that when they sent out that census to everybody, census survey form. That's being compiled as we speak.
That's a piece of the puzzle we're missing.
So we're keeping on top of things to the best of our ability. Anybody else? All right. Yeah, we'll go on that tour. Anybody else got a question before I wrap it up? Yes.
How committed do we have to be if you wanted to have someone come talk about putting a sign up on a portion of it for sale? I mean, if you get an offer, I mean, you take it or you don't, right? I mean, how do we know what we're even...
Well, why would I put a sign out then?
I don't know. Because we're trying to find out stuff.
See what interest it generates.
Yeah, I think that kind of thing might be best handled by word of mouth, not necessarily putting a sign out. You know what? I mean, think about it. I was talking about it earlier. Don't start spreading rumors that I'm planning on buying property on 31 and 4 Mile Road. But suddenly you put a for sale sign out there and look at everybody who's going to drive past that and say, oh, the church is for sale. Everybody, mark my words, it'll happen. Who was over here? Yeah, you got that right. Yeah, I'm being streamed here, and it's going to be online. So I'm not selling property, and I'm not buying property.
Hello. I want to take full responsibility for suggesting item number 4, sale of the property. I am not for promoting portions of the property. My suggestion several months ago to the administration was that we sell everything, including the school, including the building, the old Casia Hall, including this building. Now, I fully recognize that I'm not going to make a whole lot of friends in the neighborhood. I understand that. However, what Deacon Greg said made sense. We have to have a vision, but we have to have a vision of ourselves. Now, I'm not talking about being selfish. I'm talking about being good stewards to ourselves. We have a problem now. That problem is going to continue for the foreseeable future. in the deficit that we are running. All the other options that were given will cost us money. It will cost us a lot of money. The only option that I saw that did not cost us money was to make money by selling everything. Now, obviously, not everyone is going to agree on any or all of the options at the same time. I get that. But think it through. My vision, as Greg had suggested, we have to have a vision. Greg, I'm sorry if I'm plagiarizing you. My vision is to make this parish whole. And by doing that, you tear it all down and you make it whole with as much cash as we can get. When you think about Caledonia, if you live in Caledonia, you know all too well that Caledonia is not business friendly at all in any way, shape, or form. My property tax bill just went up $60,000 because we don't have business to support the everyday guy. All right? And it's a lot of my neighbors are going through the same thing. But there is a lot of property throughout this community to build a church. We are not Walmart. We are not a problem with vehicles coming in around the clock with shoppers walking to their cars, beeping their horns. We would propose a church, substantially different idea, in all kinds of possible neighborhoods, because Caledonia is not business friendly. But I bet you if we just took a look, I bet you we could find a property that would fit our needs. And if we pray hard enough, work hard enough, I bet you we could get a good buck for this place.
I'm sorry, I gotta say this again. I'm gonna stand up. What Dennis said was 100%. The whole idea here is to make sure this parish survives. This parish will not survive if we go into debt to the point that, I'm just gonna say it, come bankrupt. Then that would be the end of St. Rita Parish, St. Rita School. It would all be gone because we can't sustain ourselves. That is the honest to God's truth. I'm sorry, yes.
To your point. So we don't keep the building, that doesn't mean we're not a community. We can grow still as a community without this particular building.
But if we go under, then we don't have it.
Right. That's what
Thank you.
Getting back to the short-term problem right here, and I think that's what I understood by the survey is dealing with the monastery. If you put, or not, okay, that's going to be my question. If we don't, and we leave it in, just close it up, can we do that? And what does our insurance carrier say? Are you allowed to do that?
It's a storage facility. It'll have to be insured.
Well, you can turn an asset into a liability real quick.
Well,
and I'm just wondering, who all has a say in that? Does
well,
the
I can check with
Archdiocese-
Molly Hatfield at Catholic Mutual Insurance. I can do that. She's a good friend of mine. She used to be a parishioner.
It's getting late, and as part of the pastoral council, I want to make sure that everybody here knows that this is not the first discussion going on these items. the trustees, Sharon and Dennis, along with the parish pastoral council, along with the financial council, buildings and grounds, have been dealing with these issues, trying to help Father get his hands around what's going on. With all the comments that we've heard here tonight, there's some darn good ideas, very worthwhile thoughts. And with what you're getting back on your survey, those questions, gives us the basis now, along with what we've already discussed prior to this, to put together, as you and I have discussed, a subcommittee or a special committee of people who are handpicked to go and have the authority to talk to real estate, engineering, architecture, Payne and Dole, etc., and get some real numbers together, some real thoughts together, to come back to Father and the parish and say, okay, these are the absolute options now for us to carry on. Short term, long term, we need to get that group formalized and put together so that you have the basis to get those answers. And I, for one, appreciate you taking the time to put this all together tonight, Father.
You're welcome. Happy to do it. All right, there are no other questions? There are no other questions. Let's draw this meeting to a close. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Thank you for coming out tonight. It's very helpful. Appreciate it.